everyone, this is Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. This is a little t-shirt that I bought recently and I really like it and I want to duplicate it. And I'm going to be using this stretch knit fabric from Joann Fabrics and Crafts, and I'm going to make one little design change up here. It has a little bit of a decorative trim, but it's really narrow, and it's something that I really can't buy anywhere. So I decided to get this trim that I also bought at Joann Fabrics and Crafts. It's about 1 inch wide eyelet trim, and in place of this little decorative trim, I'm going to be putting this on there, and it goes really well with this stretch knit fabric. So let's get started. I am using wrapping paper to draw my pattern onto. You can use butcher's paper. You can also buy paper at Home Depot on rolls in the paint department, and you can get it in really large, wide pieces. Or you can tape pieces of paper together. Right now, the front side of my shirt is facing up. So I'm going to fold the shirt in half as evenly as I can and make sure everything is nice and lined up. Line up this fold right here on the edge of the paper. Then get a pencil and a little seam gauge or some kind of ruler to mark your pattern. Now, because I'm going to put binding over the edge here, I don't need to add any extra fabric up here for the seam allowance. So I'm just going to draw right along the edge of this neckline. Then up here at the shoulder, I'm going to set my seam gauge to 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to mark 5/8 of an inch out from the edge of the shoulder, the arm hole here, the side, and the bottom edge. Now I'm going to connect the dots. So I'm going to take a darker marking pen and I'm just going to connect them. I'm going to use a rotary cutter, or you can use scissors and cut your pattern out. If you're using the rotary cutter, keep your hands at a safe distance. Right on the pattern back, and this is the fold, and shoulder, sides. Have the back side of your shirt facing up now and fold it in half again. And this time you're going to be drawing the pattern for the front. Place it on the fold line. And again, make sure everything is lined up. This part right here is the back of the shirt. So in order to draw this neckline, you need to fold this under and out of the way. So again, just draw along the edge and go ahead and mark your 5/8 seam allowance all the way around all of the edges. Then I would write on it that this is the front. Put along here, this is the fold. And shoulder, so you understand where everything is, especially if you're new. Sides. This stretch knit that I'm using is 60 inches wide. Because this shirt is not a really wide shirt, I really don't need 60-inch wide fabric. So I folded the selvage edge to that center fold line, and I had more than enough room to lay out both pieces of my pattern. I'm using these magnetic pin pads to hold my pattern down. You can pin the pattern and then cut out with scissors. I'm choosing to use my rotary cutter because it's just quicker, it's more accurate, and it's just easier for me. So use whatever is best. Now remember, keep your fingers at a safe distance when using a rotary cutter. And continue cutting out your second piece. I've cut 2 pieces of trim, so I'm laying it up here and I'm bringing front sides together. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to use a really narrow seam allowance up here. I'm only going to do about 1/8 of an inch, and it all depends on the type of trim that you're using. So look at it, see where there's a good place to stitch on it. And mine, there's a nice little stitch line already there on the trim, so I'm just going to stitch right over that. I've just finished stitching it on. Now open it like this and have the seam here going towards the shirt fabric itself. So I've got it facing down. Then top stitch a little less than 1/8 of an inch along there. Take the other side of the shirt and bring it front side down and line it up on this edge here of the lace. Stitch that 1/8 of an inch seam across there. After you're done, then top stitch along the edge right there. Then go ahead and trim your lace or trim, whatever you're using, so that it's even like that, and you're going to do it on both sides. On the original shirt, there is some binding over the edges. So I cut a strip of fabric 1.5 inches wide on the bias, and it really gives a lot of stretch, and it will lay really nice because it is cut on the bias. If you're not sure how to cut your fabric on the bias, click on the link in the upper right hand corner for instructions. I like to just, even though it's a knit, I'm still going to fold it in half and press it. And it does pretty good. It's a little bit harder to fold it over, but it works out okay. So I'm just pressing it all the way down the full length of the strip. So you want to make sure you have a nice little crease in there. Then unfold it. And now I'm going to take the raw edges and bring it to that crease there in the center and press it all the way down. Now take the other side and bring it into the center also and press it all the way down. Take your bias strip and you're going to just start a little off center on the back side. And so this is my back. And I'm going to start about 3 inches into where my strip begins. So a little off center and place it here. And you can pin if you like. And you're going to stitch right on that little crease right along there. And go all the way around the entire neckline. And when you get back here to where you started, stop about 4 inches away from where you started stitching. The way I'm going to bring my binding ends together is going to be a little different than maybe what some of you are used to doing, but I have a handicapped right hand, and I have had to learn to just change the standard to suit my needs. But if you're used to having both ends cut at the diagonal and you bring them together on the diagonal, by all means continue doing it that way. But if you're someone like me who has a hand issue, and I know there's some of you out there that do, I'm going to cut my ends straight. All right, because it's just almost next to impossible for me to bring them together correctly once I get to this stage in the neckline. Now I'm going to just fold this over like this. I'm going to bring the other end and make sure your fabric is laying really nice, and I'm going to overlap them, and I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch overhang right here so that they overlap, the ends will overlap. And go ahead and cut. Now fold your garment just a little bit, open the bias tape up that you've made, and then stitch it together using a 1/4 inch seam across here. Open up the seam and finish stitching it down. Now you're going to fold this bias strip like you had pressed it. So I can already see my folded press line there, so I'm just going to fold it there. Then take it, and here's my raw edge. I'm going to bring it up and over, and then bring it over the back of the neckline. So you're binding that neckline just like if you were making a quilt or a pot holder. It's the same concept. And once you've got it lined up, then I recommend you place some pins to hold it in place. And you want to take your time doing this, and because you want everything lined up really nice, because the neckline is something that's noticeable on a shirt if it's not made very well. So continue doing that all the way around the neckline. As you are pinning, you want to get this edge right here of the bias strip. Pull it past the stitch line here, okay, where you first stitched the front side of the binding on. Stitch on the front. You're going to stitch right on the bias strip close to the edge, and your goal is to try to catch this lower edge of your bias strip. Here is the neckline on the front side, and then this is what it looks like on the back side. This is the armhole area. If you have a serger, I recommend you go ahead and run your 2 armholes through the serger. If you do not have a serger, don't worry, you're still going to be able to finish this top. Bring the front and back sides with the pretty side of the fabric facing each other and pin along the side seams. You have 2 different ways of finishing this seam off. If you have a serger, you can just run this through your serger on each seam. If you do not have a serger, then do a zigzag stitch on both sides. Here is a sample of the zigzag stitch that I did. I've set my zigzag stitch length to 3.0. Always test your stitches out when you're working with knits. So just take a sample piece of your fabric and play around with the tension and the stitch length. When you're stitching, do not stretch the fabric as you're stitching. Just let it flow through your machine. Then take it out and make sure it stretches like this does. If you should use a straight stitch on this and you stretch the fabric, you risk your thread breaking, and not only that, the seam is not going to stretch very easily. Fold your bottom edge over to the back side 1/2 inch and then press with your iron. Fold the armholes over 1/2 inch to the back and then press with your iron. I'm using a twin needle, and the size of this twin needle is 40/80, and it's considered a mid-size twin needle. If you're going to use the twin needle to finish off the hemming of the armhole and the lower part of the shirt, Then you want to set the stitch length to 3.0 and the tension to 1.0. And this is what it looks like on the front, and then this is what it looks like on the back. Now what this sample here is just on cotton fabric, but on stretch knits it stretches really nice, and you'll look at your t-shirts and they're usually finished with a stitch like this. So what you're going to do is you're going to be stitching from the front side. So if you were accurate in folding over your hem 1/2 inch, then you would place your edge of your shirt or top or blouse, whatever you want to call it, right on the 1/2 inch line. Mine's right there. And I'm going to just line this up. And I have a little locking stitch, and I always start mine with that. And I'm just going to do that first. And now just keeping the hem line edge on that 1/2 inch line, just stitch. And just go all the way around the hem line, the bottom portion of your shirt, and then do the same thing on the armholes. Well, here it is. It's all done, and I'm very pleased with how it turned out. For more beginners clothing projects, play this video until a green screen appears and then click on the links. Okay, relax, Manny. This is not Broadway.
Yes, it is.
It is far from it. If you like this video, please click on thumbs up, and don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click on that red button down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Click on the bell and enter your email address so you receive those email notifications. If you're not receiving your email notifications, go to your cell phone or iPad, click on settings, and turn notifications on. This is Maria and Bailey, Manny, Jamie, and Teddy. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.